This is Reading Test Review for Lesson 28. Our focus skill this week was figurative language. Remember that authors use phrases to make their writing more interesting and help readers picture the events. These phrases often include figurative language. In figurative language, the meaning of a group of words may be different from the words' individual meanings. So we have a simile. That is a comparison that uses the words like or the word as. And this is our example. The man is as strong as an ox. We also have a metaphor. A metaphor describes a thing as something else. The example is the rainbow was a bright ribbon across the sky. An idiom is a word group with a special meaning. Jen spilled the beans about the surprise party. Personification gives human qualities to an animal or object. The marbles tried to escape. Hyperbole is an obvious exaggeration. I must have seen 1,000,000 birds fly that day. So make sure you take the time to review this chart, and you can actually use the chart while you're taking the test. So have it handy. The story of the week was The Bunions. This genre is a tall tale. The story contains impossible, exaggerated events and larger-than-life characters. And the author wrote the story to entertain the reader with an amusing story. Remember, these events could not happen in real life. In this part of the story, we learn about Paul Bunyan, who's a giant. It tells us that he is bigger than a redwood tree. Remember, we learned about redwood trees. That's our California state tree. Redwood trees are about 200 feet tall or higher. And it also tells us that he's stronger than 50 grizzly bears. So all of these things are just to show exaggerations. And it also tells us that he meets a gigantic woman named Carrie McEntee. And while he's in the forests of Kentucky, he uses an acre of dry cane to make a torch and light his way. And then it also tells us that his grin after he met Carrie McEntee was as wide as the Missouri River. So all these things are just exaggerations. The author uses figurative language to express exaggerations about the character Paul Bunyan. Here we learn that Paul and Carrie get married and they have gigantic wedding invitations. They're so large that they can be seen for miles. And they get married in an enormous crystal chamber that Carrie carves out, and that is an actual place. Mammoth, she refers to it as Mammoth Cave, and that's an actual place in the United States. And then they also tell us that they settle down and then they have 2 children, little Jean and Teeny. And again, the author is exaggerating because look at how big the kids are, and they're named Little Jean and Teeny. So again, it's supposed to be a humorous story. Here we learn about their children, Teeny and Little Jean. Teeny has such sweet hair that bears crawl into it, so her parents take her to a river to get the bears washed out. She's so big and she has so much hair that only something as big and as powerful as the river water can clean them out. And then she begins to yell out Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is an actual place. Teeny's saying that the waters of the Niagara River are falling, so this is a clever way of explaining how Niagara Falls got its name. And then we read about Little Jean. He's curious and he begins to play in a canyon, and again he begins to form a landmark that is known as Bryce Canyon. Here we learn that Little Jean's shoes were full of sand after sculpting Bryce Canyon. And so then there's another natural landmark that he makes with all that sand left in his shoes. And that's the sand dunes of Colorado. And then little Jean and Teeny decide to go play in the Pacific Ocean. And little Jean begins to again carve out in 50 miles of zigzag along the California coast, and that's an explanation of how Big Sur came to be. So as you can see, there's a pattern here. The author keeps explaining how the bunions are forming natural features or landmarks in the United States. In this part of the story, we learn that Ma Bunyan wanted to put up a barrier to prevent her children from wandering off. So they built a barrier, the Rocky Mountains, and then she also wanted to have hot water to clean their clothes and dishes after they went camping. So she made geysers. Again, these landforms are more explanations of natural wonders that, according to this story, came from the family. In this part, we learn how the children grow up and they go to different parts of the world to follow their interest. And Ma and Pa Bunyan, they retire and they go live in a wilderness area. In this last page, the author suggests that little Jean may now be making unusual landforms even in other planets. So I hope you enjoyed the story, The Bunions. This week, our vocabulary words are scenic, colossal, illusion, hardy, behemoth, fanciful, and cordially. Make sure you review the vocabulary words and their meanings for your test. Our grammar skill this week was adverbs. An adverb is a word that describes a verb. Adverbs such as suddenly can tell how something happened. Adverbs such as indoors can tell where something happened. Adverbs such as today can tell when something happened. So make sure you review these, and then there's other examples on this page. Some of the adverbs that describe where are inside, nearby, here, nowhere. Some adverbs that tell when are earlier, often, now, yesterday. Some adverbs that describe how are patiently, cheerfully, carefully, hungrily. We also worked on comparing with adverbs. We add ER to short adverbs to compare two things. You add EST to compare three or more things. For short adverbs that end in LY, change the Y to I before adding ER or EST. With longer adverbs, add the word more to compare two things, or add the word most to compare more than two things. Remember, some examples are if the adverb is fast, if you're comparing two things, we just say faster. If we're comparing more than two things, we say fastest. The adverb early, comparing two things, we use the word form earlier. And if we compare more than two things, we use the word form earliest. And then the adverb soundly, we compare two things, we say more soundly. If we compare more than two things, we say most soundly. And then we also discuss double negatives. Words such as never, nor, nowhere are called negatives. A double negative, is two negative adverbs in a sentence. So make sure you review these as well.